Oops, hello everybody, and welcome to Astrology in the News. And today is April 20th, 2018. And I got a couple of interesting things for you today. Of course, it's always interesting. Why would I be boring, right? So let's just kick this off, right? Of course, yogic wisdom of the day. We must be willing to get rid of the life we've planned, so as to have the life that is waiting for us. And this is by Joseph Campbell, and I have no idea who that guy is, but it's a mighty, mighty fine quote. We planned for Hillary, but now we're waiting for Donnie to go. Am I right? Anyway, so Miguel Diaz-Canel to rule Cuba. Okay, so basically Fidel Castro's gone, and they're trying to name his successor, and it was Raul Castro for a while, but looks like this guy is coming up to the up and up. And of course, you know, ironically about communism, for a party for everybody, they always have to have a dictator in place to get things done. So cigar enthusiasts are jumping for joy. All right. So yeah, if you don't know what this means, Google Bill Clinton and cigar and don't look at the images. So looking at Miguel Diaz-Canel's chart, let's see. So don't have a birth time for him, but of course he's got his sun in Aries, which means leadership, leadership, leadership. Now, this is fascinating. He's going into his Mercury Dasha, give or take a couple of years. He actually could be going into his Mercury Dasha around now. I ran this chart for noon, and that is going to skew the Dasha results. It can skew it up to by about a year either way, but you can still make a general prediction out of it. So let's say that he's going into his Mercury Dasha. His Mercury is actually debilitated, conjunct an exalted Venus, and of course he has Ketu here, close to the cusp here in the sign of Pisces. And so this is in the second house from his moon. So this is really about money and financial assets. So this guy, now, okay, when you have an exalted Venus conjunct a debilitated Mercury, there's a lot of bleeding of the emotions and devotion. Really, I mean, think about Venus there. It's all about devotion. It's exalted. It's, you know, expressing pure emotion. And of course, it's not being tempered by Mercury, which is logic and reason. And Mercury's debilitated. And what's really interesting is it's depositing this Rahu right here in the sign of Virgo. So, I mean, this is a lot of, how should I put it? Like a lot of devotional energy. And you know, when you have Rahu here in the sign of Virgo, well, actually, it's just barely in the sign of Virgo, but you know what? I'll give it to him. I mean, it really adds a lot of like particular and meticulous attention to detail, and there's also like a passion for this. So, and you know, you see, he has his Mars and his Moon conjunct in the sign of Aries, or I'm sorry, Aquarius. So here we have a man that's very dedicated to the cause. So I really honestly believe when I look at his chart, he is all in on the Communist Party. So this guy is actually going to be a good leader for Cuba in the sense that he believes what he believes, and it's almost like an undying loyalty to it. You can also see this too by Saturn and Jupiter here. This guy, oh, he's creeping up on his second Saturn return too. But here you see Jupiter here, retrograde Jupiter in the sign of Sagittarius. Morals, ethics, and everything like that too takes center stage in this guy's life. I mean, he really truly does believe what he believes, and you know, of course, the exalted sun here, I mean, gives a real potential for leadership. Usually, you see people with an exalted sun in the sign of Aries or in Mars in the military. I don't know if he's done any military service or not. That'd be something interesting to see. Now, PenceHaley 2020. So I'm going to lump these two together. So apparently there's a rumor going out there that Pence is going to run in 2020. So let's take a look at his chart and NikkiHaley's chart to see if we can get a good idea if this might actually become true. And of course, the 2020's 1950s resurrection tour. So if you like the 1950s, get these two together, throw them on the ballot, and you know, you'll have all that fun stuff. So I mean, let's see here. I'm just checking over right here at the chat. So, all right. So, moving back. So here's Mike Pence's chart. So Mike Pence is he's actually just going into his Mercury Dasha. And I actually think this coincides a little bit more with the election. So his moon is actually in the sign of Gemini, and it could actually be also here in the sign of Taurus. So we don't exactly have a birth time for Mike Pence. So I'm going to go with that. His moon is probably going to be in the sign of Taurus. Other things that he's got going on with him. So the Sun and Mercury are almost conjunct here in the sign of Taurus. Usually, I'd say Taurus is a conservative sign. traditionally represent, so in astrology, at least in Western astrology, Republicans are equated with Jupiter, and the Democrats are created with created, were they created by Saturn? I don't know. They're equated with Saturn because Saturn's more, if you think about the nature of a donkey, it's hardworking, it's how do I put it? It's like hardworking. Saturn's all about the sign of the people, working for the people, service, things like that. Where Jupiter's about wisdom, knowledge, expansion, things like that. I don't know if you want to equate that with Republicans. I don't know. It's kind of subject to interpretation. But let's see. Venus and Mars here are in the conjunct here in the sign of Cancer. So this is somebody that really does care about his values, maybe a little bit too much. This is a little bit similar to the guy that's going to be taking over. Let's see, what's his name? Miguel here. This is a little bit similar to Miguel's chart, that he has Venus in a water sign conjunct another planet that could cause a little bit of difficulty, and that is Mars, right? So when Mars is actually debilitated here in the sign of Cancer, so there's a lot of deep-seated feelings and anger too that usually lies above the surface. And I think when Pence gets mad, he gets mad. But it's really interesting because you see how this Mars is functioning in the sign of Cancer. He really buries his anger. This guy has a lot of control over his anger. And what can happen though sometimes is when it comes out very aggressively. So this is just a trait of Mars in the sign of Cancer. This isn't just with Mike Pence. But when you add Venus to it, there's also this need to really want to express love and affection in a Cancerian type way. Let's see, Jupiter here is retrograde in the sign of Scorpio, and then Saturn right here. Okay, so he's actually very close to his second Saturn return. So what does this have to do with running for election? I'm taking a look at his chart, and I'm not seeing anything that would indicate somebody running for election. I mean, he doesn't have any planets, and unless the moon is here in the sign of exaltation, he doesn't have any planets in like exaltation, or like we could take a look at fixed stars here. Now, Rigel is conjunct the sun, so that isn't necessarily equated with leadership either as far as fixed stars are concerned. So I'm seeing Pence's chart, and I'm not getting the idea that he's even going to make a run for president. And you can even take a look at his dashas here. You're not seeing anything in 2020 or 2024. That would be the other time that he could run. So, well, he could even run after that. But even after his Mercury dasha, he's going to be going into his K2 dasha, and that's a little more of a reclusive type of dasha. So, all right, NikkiHaley also do not have a birth time for her, but taking a look at her chart, this is another thing where her moon could either be in Aries or the sign of Pisces. So it's kind of interesting. We're talking about these two people. They have both their moons are close to the cusp of a sign. Let's see, Mars here is also too in the sign of Pisces. So let's just say her moon is in the sign of Pisces. Let's see, looking at her dashas now, she just went into her Venus dasha. So this could be give or take maybe a couple of months, but I think this is probably close because this is not too far when she actually got named an ambassador. So the Venus dasha for her, and her Venus is actually very close to the fixed star Formula, or Formahal or Formula. And one of the keys for this star, especially when it's conjunct Venus, is it brings fame or infamy. And usually these people, even if they're kind of like the Teflon Don. I used to call Donald Trump the Teflon Don. Of course, he doesn't have the star in his chart, but people tend to throw stuff at him. They usually tend to come out on top. So, and it's almost just by luck. But another thing too is with this really doesn't signal government. Usually, people that have this Venus placement are artists and musicians and things like that. So maybe she'll become a rock star, right? Let's see, Rahu and Sun are conjunct here in the sign of Capricorn. This could actually show politics and government. So especially with the Sun and North Node of the moon here, Capricorn, I think is a sign of government. So this would be a sign of somebody that is going into government. Mercury and Jupiter, Mercury's not too well placed here in the sign of Sagittarius. Let's see, Venus is, it's a decent placement for it in the sign of Aquarius. It's not debilitated, it's in a friendly sign. So her going through her Venus dasha right now, I wouldn't be surprised if she rises to higher prominence. So looking at her chart though, 2021, there is a possibility that NikkiHaley might make a run for president. I see this as more likely than Mike Pence. And even if Mike Pence does run, I think Mike Pence will probably run out of a feeling of obligation, and not because he wants to do it. So I could see Mike Pence, especially with that Mars in the sign of Cancer, really burying his deep feelings and what he wants to do. So, other than that, let's see, retrograde Saturn here in the sign of Taurus here. This is in our second or third house. This usually shows somebody that's very subconscious around, how do I put it? Self-conscious around money, and they're very particular about money. So NikkiHaley probably is very good at saving money here with a retrograde Saturn, because Saturn in the sign of Taurus, especially when it's retrograde, and this would be in her second house if the moon was in the sign of Aries, really makes somebody that's a spendthrift. I mean, they also feel really restricted with their money. So really fascinating stuff. All right, so that's all I have for you today. I hope you liked what you saw. And also, too, I just want to say that one of my predictions looks like it's going to come true, and that is that there's not going to be a war with North Korea, at least not over the current actions that are going on with the Trump administration. So I just want to make that clear. And hopefully, if you want to contact me, and if you liked what you saw, mash that like button and click like and subscribe down, and share me out too. I always appreciate that.